Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
Thieves of Reddit, why do you steal? Serious, Episode 2.
I don't steal anymore, but when I was a kid, I was probably the best thief you could find. Probably to nobody's surprise, my thievery started because my family, 2 sisters and my mom, hit rock bottom. I'm talking as broken. Well, one day my mom and I were in convenience store and there were these rings on the counter. I think they were like 2 for $5, or something. My mom looked kind of sad for a second because she knew she couldn't get them for my sisters. It was only a second, but I saw her slip 2 of them into her pocket when the clerk turned away. When I saw her do that, it was like a big light bulb came on. If I wanted something, all I had to do was take it when nobody was looking. That's simple. I started out stealing things that I knew the members of my family had an interest in. If I saw them looking at something, I'd steal it even if they didn't want it. This actually got me in trouble with my mom when she found out. We talked about it and how I got the idea from seeing her steal those rings, and she explained to me why she did what she did. She made it clear to me that she knew she did something stupid that she would never do again. After that, I just started stealing for myself. I mean, I had the talent for it, so why should I have stopped? Plus, it was fun. I could walk into store and steal pretty much anything. I'm not going to share my methods because I don't want anybody to get any ideas, but I will list some of the things I've stolen. For starters, I did have an N64 that my mom worked hard to get me for my birthday. She didn't have any money for games, though. I borrowed most of my games. At some point, I got tired of borrowing. I wanted to own it. The first N64 game I stole was some snowboarding game. I didn't like it, so I just went out and stole more games. I've owned over 80 plus N64 games and never paid a single dime for one. Razor scooters. Remember those? We started stealing with a group after a while. Co-op. Stole about 8 plus Razor scooters out of the mall. Everybody wanted one, so I went to Toys R Us and walked right out the door with one. I showed it to a friend and he broke it on purpose. I went right back to Toys R Us and stole another one. A few weeks later we hit the mall. Dreamcast. Jacked the shit out of TRU for a Dreamcast wearing nothing but a towel. Get at me. PlayStation. Ripped KM off for one of those bad boys. Okay, now this one is my all-time favorite thefts. Stole 2 Game Boy Colors out of KM because I wanted to play Pokemon with my sister. On the way home, I stole Pokemon Gold, Pokemon Silver and a transfer cable out of BB. Stole a few of the early Harry Potter books out of BN. I've stolen binders worth of Pokemon cards. I stole so much stuff as a kid that I can't even remember all of it. Also, please note, I've never broken into anyone's house or anything like that. I've stolen other kids' Pokemon cards, but it's not they didn't steal mine. 3. Greed and irreverence in younger days. Then I got arrested for shoplifting and went to jail for 2 days and had all of that scared directly out of me. There is nothing more balls-blenchingly terrifying than seeing policemen approaching you and knowing they are going to arrest you. Then you go to jail and you meet people who are there long-term and see what that life is like. The worst thing I've ever encountered firsthand in this life was a pair of guys who were in my cell block serving 1129, which means 11 months and 29 days in jail because the prisons are full, and if you are sentenced to anything over a year in jail you have to be moved. They saw I was a dumb kid and spent the first day trolling the shit out of me and the second day giving me some useful advice on how not to hang up my life with petty crime. Never stole again, although I did switch price tags on a regular item and the special edition version a few weeks ago to save myself $20 and felt a little sparkle of the old recklessness. Started back in middle school stealing stuff out of the lunch lines. Not because I didn't have money, more of the fact my friends would dare each other to do stupid stuff constantly, and that day was try and steal a Gatorade. I was up, so I went in and pocketed one while buying a cookie for a quarter. That was the start of a long slippery road. It became a personal challenge after that point to see how well I could steal and how much I could steal right under their noses. I enjoyed thinking I was better than them at my job than they were at theirs of stopping me. This occurred for the 2 remaining years in middle school, and then I graduated to the big leagues of stores/shops in malls/etc. At this point, I was stealing more for because I knew I could and just always did than for any other reason. Didn't matter the item, didn't matter the time, if I was out shopping for stuff you were damn right I was pocketing something along the way. If 18-year-old us needed something that we couldn't buy, mostly alcohol, I would walk in, and change that. Sometimes on bigger jobs I would have a buddy come in with me, scout, and then distract if need be. For the most part though, you just walk in, grab what you need and walk out in a couple minutes tops. Act like there is no reason to be suspicious of you, and 99% of the time anyone will be. Unfortunately, I cannot say it ended because I was caught one day, or that I learned my lesson. It all stopped because I actually got a possession charge and was put on probation, so to keep a low profile and to try and not be on probation any longer than I had to be, I just stopped with the sticky fingers. That was years ago, and haven't really stolen much since. Every now and again in a store I'll snag something small just for shits and giggles and to see if I am still better than the guy who is supposed to stop me is, but it's not like it used to be. Not sitting here saying it's a great thing to do or that I support it, just being honest. I used to steal a lot. For the most part one stole because I needed things and couldn't afford them, and I saw it as survival. I tried to do it ways that wouldn't significantly hurt any one person. I'd see warm socks at the laundromat and take one pair, or I'd grab a bottle of shampoo from a Kmart, but I'd get the cheapest brand. Mostly I stole food, medicine, clothing, things like that. Occasionally I would steal because I felt bitter about how much other people had and I didn't, especially if it was gifts or if someone had parents who lavished them with luxuries and they didn't seem very appreciative to me. I had this attitude that they were so well off that it would only be a minor inconvenience to them and they would be fine, but that having X object would immeasurably improve my quality of life. Basically that was nothing but doing what I wanted and justifying it later to myself, though. I grew out of it. In my 20s I lived in a really sketchy trailer park for a while and the neighbor kids would break into my house and steal food. Since I had been a food stealer once myself, I never said a word, left the window unlocked for them and kept the fridge and pantry as stocked as I could. At this point in my life I'm pretty comfortable financially and I donate a lot, am very giving to my friends and family whenever they need something and I can provide it, and even though I am still mentally aware of situations where I could easily get away with stealing things, it feels good not to do it and to pay for it with my own money instead. It doesn't fix the mistakes I made in the past, but I'm trying to be better moving forward and that's how I do it. I was raised by the state of Tennessee. When turned 18 they took me from my foster home to Nashville and dropped me off at the shelter. I had no ID, social security card, no birth certificate. I didn't know about job applications. Everything I owned fit into half of a large black trash bag. I started selling drugs, but didn't take long getting busted. That's when I started kicking in doors. I was a big guy, quick and mostly fearless, and good at it. I robbed drug dealers, gun collectors, and anybody who pissed me off even a little bit. Don't want to say anything else about all that, except that I never got caught robbing, and quit altogether by the time I was 24. In my career I kicked down maybe 70 doors. When I was a little kid I stole a lollipop by accident. I was in a store with my mom and asked for the lollipop. She said it was fine. For some reason, I put it in my pocket and completely forgot I had to pay for it. When I got home I realized the terrible thing I had done. I did not tell my parents, because I was afraid they would be really, really angry. I spent a horrible week, thinking they could have seen me, and the police would catch me, put me in jail and kick me. So in the weekend after I went back to that store, asked my mom for a new lollipop, played for it, and put it back. I suddenly felt a whole lot better. No one ever knew. Please, tell nobody. The police could kick me. Unfortunately, I made the difficult decision to not steal anymore. I'm well into my 20s, pay a mortgage and have established a career. But from age 8 on until about 20, I stole regularly. Nothing huge, usually I'd pick up $300 or less in goods. I did it for the thrill, to be honest. I liked going into a place and looking for security, camera, etc., and then executing a plan in order to steal something. The best one was filling a backpack with DVDs and CDs and then walking out of the store with the backpack balancing on top of my head, away from where the security system was. It was so obvious what I was doing, yet no one noticed. I was only caught once. 11. Throughout high school I stole from my school's canteen. They had it set up like any other shop. You picked out what you wanted it and presented it to the cashier to pay for it. Because it was small and there were a lot of kids at school, it would always be crowded, so my friends and I used to pocket $15 of food and pay for a raspberry strap, 80 cents, as not to arouse suspicion. I would do it because I knew I would get away with it and it was fun. Also, who doesn't like free food? I then started stealing food from supermarkets and retail for the same reason. One day my best friend got caught at school stealing and they went to check the CCTV to see if anyone else had been doing it. I didn't sleep for days. Luckily I found out that the camera stopped working a long time ago and no one fixed it. I stopped once I left high school because I realized it wasn't worth the risk and I had enough money to pay for what I was stealing. For the big stores like Walmart, you can, and I have before, gone in, stolen something. Like flea meds for dogs, little pocket lights and stuff like that. You have 3 times a year where you can return items for cash under $25 without a receipt. Well, I never got caught. But they can track you. They can look at the inventory and see how many are on the shelf, how many were scanned in to go to the shelf, and track it when it comes back. So basically, if you do it too much, you literally can get caught. Walmart's loss prevention is very smart. They normally watch that certain section of the aisle and see if you took it over the past couple days. So can and will know it was you that took it. And if caught, next time you come in and return something, police will greet you at the door. Luckily they didn't for me and I never will again. Too scary. Too much risk. Just be careful if you are going to grab and go. I wouldn't just take one item, I would take a cart and shop around, put stuff in. Pocket my think and out the door I would leave my cart and tell the greeter, "Hey, I left my wallet in the car, can you watch this?" And bam, I'm gone. I've never stolen from a small, family business, or an individual. That stuff sucks and is really rude and demoralizing to your fellow human. I have stolen a lot from bulk stores, gas stations, brand name shops, and things like that though. It's incredibly easy to do, and it is incredibly easy to justify. Those stores steal money right from people's wallets every day for crappy products with expensive names. People underestimate how easy it is to steal from stores. If you have it in your hands, you act like it belongs to you, and you act like you are doing nothing wrong, then you can just walk right out with it. No one stops you. If they do, then explain how you've been scatterbrained all day and meant to pay for it but simply forgot. I've always stolen from big department stores and grocery stores. The introduction of the self-service has made it a lot easier than it should be. The lack of cameras and security guards make for rich pickings if you do it right. At first I used to do it for a cheap thrill and to feed my addictions. With somewhere like Asda, Walmart, you can walk in, pick up a bunch of high-value goods and then return a little later in the afternoon to return all of the stuff for store credit, then spend that on booze or cigarettes and rinse and repeat. I finally got caught, all thieves do eventually, and my saving grace, I was only caught stealing a can of Monster from the fridge directly opposite the entrance. I still do it, am I ashamed? No, I'd be lying if I said yes. It gives me a cheap thrill and now I do it just for that. I don't have a reason to steal anymore, but I can't help myself. I have a box hidden under my bed with about £400 worth of Gillette razors. Do I need them? No. But I still do it, and sadly I think I will until I get caught. I used to steal because I had disordered eating patterns. I stole food, probably $30 to $80 worth of food every time I went grocery shopping for 6 months. Even though I had enough money to pay for it. I just didn't want to. Because eating junk food is bad for me and I wasn't allowed to, so I certainly wasn't going to pay money for doing something that was bad for me, right? I would then proceed to eat all the food I stole. It was only ever junk food. I never stole apples. I just buy the damn apples. I would steal 2 to 3 blocks of chocolate, muesli bars, gummy lollies, more chocolate stuff, chocolate-coated licorice, protein bars, actually lots of protein bars, and they were expensive. I would put a donut in a plastic bag, like I intended on purchasing it, and walk around and complete my shopping while eating the donut. I stopped when I started letting myself eat junk food. Just like that, no longer felt the impulse to steal it. Crazy. I'm only 16 and I tend to steal a lot of stuff and it's more of a convenience for me than the thrill. I never have money, so if I'm in a shop I would just steal maybe a drink and something else every time. Multiple times I've walked out with 3 cans of Monster in my pockets. Most I've stolen from a shop was just a pair of like 20-pound earphones. I started stealing when I was like 9 or 10 when I used to steal Yu-Gi-Oh cards. As long as you put on a face and act like you belong there, nobody questions you, and being a good liar for when they do question you is obviously helpful. So I've never stolen something major, but the amount of small items I've stolen add up. This was back in high school when my financially struggling parents worked odd jobs for a living. My mom was super strict on what we were allowed to buy. My dad tried to get us things now and then, but my mom wouldn't allow it. So my friends and I started to steal stuff we liked. It started off with small cutesy stationery and plush bears. Then I started to steal makeup for my sister. I lied to her and said my friends didn't use it anymore, amongst other stuff I knew she would like. Then it got fun and thrilling, getting everything I wanted for free without mom saying no. Then I started to steal clothes, and that was super cool for 16-year-old me. My mom always made my clothes growing up because they weren't able to buy clothes for me. So all of this was so exciting and cool. We even skipped school sometimes just to steal. I never got caught, so I felt like nothing could stop me. It started to head towards exam time, so I had to cut back a bit, but my friends still went on stealing sprees. What was a wake-up call for me was when they were caught and were held at the cop shop until 9 p.m. Their parents were ringing me around dinner time if they were over at my place, and I said no, that I truly had no idea where their daughter was. This was before every man and his dog owned a mobile phone. Next day at school my friends tell me their story of them getting caught and being brought to the police station. This didn't stop them immediately, they kept going, but their experience was enough to scare me. I once stole clothes from a mall. I was around 15. I had arrived to a mall far away from home, and it was a couple of friends and me chilling that day. We decided to do some school shopping for the upcoming year. We then walked to a store and started taking tags off and just going ham. I ended up taking around 3 shirts. Some of my friends actually took around 6 shirts and some shoes. I was surprised. Needless to say, I did it because I wanted to be cool. I didn't want to do it at first, but peer pressure took me in. And it seemed so easy at the time. So it was as easy as just taking off the tags, putting them in a bag, and walking out. I grew up in an abusive house where me, my siblings and my pets were never really taken care of. Back when I was younger I thought it was normal for children to go to school in the same dirty clothes for weeks on end, or that it was the norm for mothers to wake their children up in the middle of the night so they could clean their house until sunrise. But when I got older and the abuse got more intense, I started to realize other kids didn't have bruises like me and my brother did. None of them seemed hungry all the time, emaciated. I realized that the only ones to keep me and my brother in clean clothes and non-dire straits was my father and my grandparents, but during the other 5 days of the week we were left to our own devices while my mother fought custody battles versus my father, and me and my brother wasted away. At first I felt bad about it. I'd steal candy from stores, soda, food from my friends' houses while I was there. I know some parents knew something was wrong. A mother or two even caught me once or twice and pretended not to see. Soon I started stealing valuable things from people, starting with Pokemon cards. Sell them to friends, card shops. I used the money in my bike to buy real food for my brother and I, and soon he would outgrow his clothes. So then I would have to steal again. One day I was in a mall and I had just stolen a toy from a store for a friend's birthday when I realized I was being followed. I ran. They were a few years older than me and caught me. Pinned me down, searched me and found the food and toys I nabbed that day. By this stage in the game I was stealing almost every day, hadn't been accused or caught in months. The people that caught me had also been stealing from the store. We got to talking. They turned out to be some dick-sucking high school kids. Turned out they were impressed. They showed me a few tricks and I saw them every now and again. I sold them things that they wanted me to steal. Toys, lighters, music CDs. They put me in contact with people that could buy the things I stole. I would use this money to support myself and my brother. But that would soon change. My father would eventually win custody of me and my brother. At one point I was being isolated from my brother, so caring for him became a chore. I would leave things in his locker at school. Food, clothes, toys. What I could I would sell to the would-be fences. I even stole from my brother's classmates. He went to a private school thanks to my grandparents. Those kids always had the nicest things. At this stage in the game I am in high school. The illicit people I was in contact with tried to get me to do dead drops made up of drugs and what have you, saying that was where the real money was. This felt like a betrayal to my brother, as the majority cause for my brother's and I's suffering was my mother, who was high off her ass. I met someone though a fence I had been going to for a spell. He was slightly older and he told me if I wasn't going to start dealing then I should start thieving. He taught me some things, like the difference between being a thief and a burglar, lock-picking, laws, changing clothes, how to avoid the police. Tools of the trade. I started breaking into houses of old friends who I knew would be on vacation. Stealing electronics, jewelry was a big one. At first I would pick the locks or open windows that I knew I had access to. If the alarm went off I would snatch what I could then leave. I got good at this. I had a stockpile of money in case I ever had to get my brother and bug out for a few months. I thought stealing from friends and associates of my parents and people I knew would be the worst that I would get into, but it wasn't. After a few months my father was granted full custody of my brother. I thought I was in the clear. I thought I was done with my game. In school I was doing my best to not be noticed much. I was the target of bullies, but being the kind of person I was and living the type of life I lived, I was always willing to fight anyone and anyone who would mess with me. I was getting into a lot of fights. Some I would win and some I wouldn't. One day, after having lost a fight, I was approached by a young red-headed girl. She was someone I knew from school, another loner, wallflower, call me what you will. She was a twin. Her and her sister came to my city from the countryside. As it turned out, they were notorious pickpockets. In fact, most women are pickpockets. She took notice of my ability to take a beating. She wanted me to help her and her sister steal things. It turned out we went to the same fences, knew some of the same people. She taught me even more, how to steal from people on the streets. Our city didn't have subway stations and the like, but we did have a large airport and bus stations. We started pickpocketing left and right, spitting the money and what we got off the marks. Selling the takes IDs and whatever we found in their pockets. We did very well. Now a lot of you are probably saying that there was no need for me to do this anymore. My brother and I were out, I no longer had to care for him, watch him, raise him. But for whatever reasons I'm still very unsure of today, I always had this fear that we wouldn't be seeing the last of my mother. I was terrified she would come back into our lives and make them live in hell once again. I stole as a means to get out if I had to. I was terrified all the time. I stole and stole and stole, and I never touched the money I got from stealing. I saved it, stashed it. After all, I thought I would need it someday. I was afraid to use it because I knew so many dealers who'd buy cars and watches at the age of 16 and get caught when people started asking questions. My pickpocket partners played off my insecurities to keep me stealing with them. They enjoyed the money, the drugs they used. I still remember how we used to run our game. One would stand behind me, one would get the mark's attention while I took up a position behind the mark in a crowded bus station, and the other would pick him since they had small hands. The mark felt them about 60% of the time, and when he turned around he would see me. He gets frustrated, either hits me or holds me down, calls the cops. Sometimes people would help the mark, sometimes they'd help me. Bottom line is that when I get searched, nothing of the marks would be found on me and my partners would be long gone by then. This went on with me breaking into a house or two every month for the rest of high school, and a little after that. I stopped stealing from people when I turned 19, I was in a relationship and thought I was in love or some shit like that. Didn't want to hurt her. Didn't want to lose her, didn't want to get caught. Off and on I worked summer jobs, bought a car when I could, and no one was the wiser. I had well over $75,000 stashed away that I had saved up over 6 years of stealing. I feel horrible about the things that I've done, and I feel like there came a point where I crossed the line between needing to survive and just stealing because it was all I knew and just seemed like the thing I should be doing. I went to school. Graduated. Went to college. My family thought I was putting myself through college, even now they think I'm swimming in debt. But in reality I'm on some company's books as an employee. That's fake. They pay me my own money. The owner is an old fence that stopped and runs his own business. Right now I'm living a comfortable life, going to school for fun, working a career that I love and getting paid my own money at my fake job so that no one is the wiser. I was extremely lucky. There were plenty of times when I almost got caught, but didn't. I've lived a strange and hard life. No one should do what I did because the chances that you will end up being as lucky as I was are unlikely. Everyone I knew in that world is either in jail, pushing drugs, or dead. I've since made a name and a career based on helping people, friends, strangers, and the like. It's my own way for atoning for the horrible shit that I've done. I knew my victims, but they didn't know it was me. And yes, some material objects were taken then replaced. But I also took from these people a peace of mind. I robbed them of their sense of security. Some of them are still reeling from the experiences I forced on them, terrified to leave the house for a long time. Afraid that something bad will happen to their families during a break-in that may never come. Well, that's my short version of my story. I was a thief out of necessity, and it turned into something I did out of panic. I never got caught by Johnny Law during my 6 or 7 year career. But I should have. My mother owned a store when I was growing up. She didn't have the best business sense, and our home, school, etc. was all tied into the store, so if it went down we'd lose everything. Oh, I didn't mention what kind of store it was, a religious store next to a big church. Literally selling rosary beads, First Communion cards, pictures of Jesus, Bibles, you name it. We sold most of the catechism books and supplies for southeastern New England. Woot! What up? So as you could imagine, not very profitable at the best of times. Anyways, I caught people stealing from my mom several times. Who comes into a religious store with pictures of Jesus everywhere and steals? I've seen people steal Christmas cards to send to their grandmother. Bibles, rosary beads, you name it. More than anything, I was offended because I took it as them stealing from my mom. I knew she had a hard time and their awfulness just added to her, and thus our problems. Plus mom didn't believe in prosecution, so when she caught someone she'd grill them for a few minutes and do the good Christian thing, let them go. I'm convinced that some of the thieves went home, told their buddies my mom wouldn't prosecute, and then they came in to see for themselves what they could get away with. So that's it. And before it gets asked, yes, I'm an atheist.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.